in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 115. فَإِنَّمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثُمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever you turn, there is the face of Allah. We left last time at the end of the seerah of the great master of Arabi, and inshallah we'll start today and in several other sessions, inshallah, an examination of his great insights and his great spiritual presence that influenced not only his age but all subsequent periods in both in tasawwuf, in Arabi scene, as well as the whole course of Islamic spirituality. I cannot underestimate or overestimate that the great master had on of spirituality in Islam, because he combined not only his own magnificent visions, his experiences, and his true illumination, but he was also a man of great erudition, a man of the outer also. He was in many ways a master theologian of his time. So it is really very, very hard to try to encapsulate the works of Ibn Arabi in one or two, or even 200 sessions. And those who try to do that, I think, are really doomed to failure. It is doubly more difficult if one doesn't have the right spiritual orientation, and it is more difficult if one does not or is not on a path of inner enlightenment and inner Allah. We will try to give some basic building blocks of the system of Ibn Arabi and see how they do not supplant our understanding of true Islam, not take the place of the external pillars that we consider to be necessary to the practice of Islam. They mainly highlight it and raise it to another level of awareness and consciousness. His greatest work is the Futuhat al-Makkiyah, or the Meccan revelations, which I think in the last talk I gave you some brief description of how they came to him. They came to him through really a series of unveilings over time, some in very, very short span of time, some in an instantaneous flash, others over a period of time, primarily when he was in Mecca. The whole essence of Ibn Arabi's teaching can be really described by the question of how does one find Allah? The purpose of man, that the purpose of our journey on this earth is to reach awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to reach knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How does one reach that knowledge? How does one find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Finding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the central question of the teachings of the system of Ibn Arabi. Finding in Arabic is wujud. To find something is to use the term, the verb wujud. Wujud also means existence. So finding Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and understanding the reality and nature of existence is the purpose of all those who are on a path towards inner knowledge, self-knowledge, and inner enlightenment. It is a central question that should concern us, and is a central question that concerns the man. How does one find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth? It doesn't come through conceptualizing, it does not come through rationalizing, it does not come through a system development, it does not come through intellectualizing, it does not come through transmission of inherited wisdom and knowledge. It comes above all through tasting, through dhawq. And dhawq, that is the refinement of the inner condition of a man or a person, in order to be in a state where he can recognize the supremacy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and recognizes the link between the Creator and the created, between being in its pure and sheer consciousness and contingent or secondary existence, is the purpose of all true systems of inner knowledge. And it is what he calls the muhaqqiqun, the verifiers, have tasted. It is what the awliya Allah, those who are not in fear and who are not in sorrow, as the Quran says, are those people who have found Allah. So the journey of all of us, inshallah, is along that path, and that is the central theme, the central core of all the teachings of the great master. So if you take all his books, if you take the Discourses, Al-Hikam, the Futuhat al-Makkiyah, his poetry, his various other treatises, they relate ultimately and finally to the central question of how does one find Allah. The ultimate knowledge is the knowledge of not being able to know Allah, because only Allah knows Allah. It is the approximation to the level of pure consciousness, which is the purpose and the beginning, the middle, and the end of this journey. Because to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically to end up in a state of bewilderment. Because as the ayah that I have quoted in the Quran from Surah Al-Baqarah, wherever you turn, there is the face of Allah. So the central conundrum, or the apparent paradox that becomes unveiled to all of us, inshallah, we reach a station of inner purification and knowledge, is to understand within our beings this bewilderment, this hiyar, which is the who ma siwahu, he and not he. If wherever you turn, there is the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the purpose of the journey seems to be basically circular. Wherever we are, wherever we turn, whatever we see, we ultimately see the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That it is this knowledge that all is Allah and what is not Allah is ma siwa Allah. That is what existence is about. Existence in its created form, existence in its manifested form, is what is not Allah. Allah supersedes and encompasses all. So this hira, this bewilderment, is the bewilderment of the person in true knowledge, because he has unified the he, not he conundrum himself. The great master moves on. I'm trying to encapsulate certain themes that are found in his works, primarily in Futuhat al-Makkiyah, and try to build around them, inshallah, certain unified approach to what in Arabi is referring to, both in terms of his technical language, in terms of his own spiritual insight. So, after we ask this question, how does one find Allah? Then we say to ourselves, the process comes through dhawq, through tasting. How does one begin to understand the system by which the manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes place? Next to a word or concept that he uses time and time again, which is the concept of the worlds, al-alam, and the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the hadra. His universe, universe of an Arabi, the universe of creation is divided into two unified in one, and everything that is not He. Allah is existence, is being, is absolute sheer plenitude, absolute pure consciousness, and it is through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that everything is created. And everything that is created in all of its manifestations, in all of its hierarchy, in all of its divisions, is what is not Allah. So while we witness Allah in all, We are witnessing the manifestations, we are witnessing the traces, we are witnessing the acts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all of these ultimately point to the unity, the tawheed that exists. This requires, I would say from my own experience, a great leap in awareness and in consciousness, because this constant apparent contradiction between he and not he cannot be reconciled by the rational mind. Again, we go back to certain issues, for example, in quantum mechanics or quantum physics, where we cannot pinpoint the place and the speed of a certain object at the same time. Although we know that it has to be at the same time, but they cannot be both measured at the same time. This ability to understand mathematically is possible between what is and what is not at the same time. In the realm of inner awareness and inner knowledge requires a leap, and inshallah it will be a leap in the right direction. That is a leap of recognizing that he, not he, is unified in one. The universe that in Arabic described, or the worlds, the alam that in Arabic described, is divided into basically the macro world and the micro world. The macro world is the entire cosmos in all of its manifestations, not just the physical universe, but all existent entities, seen and unseen. The micro world is the world of man, is the world of the insan, and one reflects the other. The macro world is the manifestations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in multiplicity, and he sees man as that entity that is able to gather all the manifestations of the divine attributes into one. So while the macro reflects multiplicity, many, the micro, that is the microcosm, which is man, gathers them all. The world in Arabic is divided into basically 5. The world of the essence, what he calls the essence, that. And this is the world of the essence of Allah in himself, which we cannot ask about or know anything about, because only Allah knows Allah. This is the source of all being, of all attributes, of all the forces and actions that bring existence into being. That is the essence in itself. The next world is the world of the spiritual manifestations of that. Inshallah we'll come to that later. The third world is the world that he calls Alam al-Khayal, the imaginal world. And imaginal world, we have to be very, very clear, is not the world of imagination. It is not what you and I conjure up when we try to visualize events or actions or things or associations that are not in front of us. It's a different realm of existence. The fourth world is the corporeal world, that is the world of bodies, of ajsam. These worlds are the worlds that are made out of matter, made out of things that can be measured, weighed in mass, measured, weighed in volume, in movement, and so on. And the last world, which is the world of the microcosm, is the world of the perfect man, of the insan al-kamil. All of these worlds, these 5 worlds, these 5 universes, these 5 realities are the realities of what he calls al-hadra rabbaniyya, the divine presence. That is, the divine presence is present in all of these worlds. It's present in the essence naturally, in the dad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we know nothing about, cannot know anything about, and should not even ask about. And it is present in the other world, the world of the spirit, the world of the imaginary realm, the world of bodies, of motion, of action, and the world of the insan al-kamil. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is present in all of these universes. And wherever we turn, there is the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that I have used before, being, existence, non-existence, wujud, basically the system of Ibn Arabi. There's a shorthand that is always used nowadays to encompass the system of Ibn Arabi for those who want to praise or those who want to condemn, and that is the concept of the unity or unicity of being, wahdat al-wujud. But what does really the master talk about wujud? What is wujud? What is being? What is existence? What is non-existence? Wujud can mean both being and existence. Non-existence in Arabic is adam. Sheer being, absolute sheer being, absolute plenitude is the world, the universe of Allah himself. It's the universe of absolute pure. way of trying to understand, at least the best way that I have tried to understand the great master, is to understand how being manifests itself, and the simile of light which the Quran uses. Again, I would repeat that time and again, inshallah, now and in the future, is that Ibn Arabi's system is anchored in the Quran. It is anchored in Quranic sayings, anchored in Quranic ayahs, and Futuhat al-Makkiyah and Fusus al-Hikam are full of ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So the light, the simile of light, which appears in Surah An-Nur, is the way that we should try to understand how being manifests itself. As light exists in and of itself, and then radiates, the degree of radiation, the degree of intensity of proximity to light is what is the relationship between being and existence. So Allah in His absolute essence, as a being, as a source that is able, qadir, and has the will, irada, of creating, is like absolute light in and of itself. In order for light to be recognized, it has to emanate. And the process of emanation creates radiation. There's a radiance to it. The further you go away from the source of absolute light, the less light you receive, or the obverse of that, the more dark it becomes. So being, on one side, the absolute sheer being in itself. On the other side, you have non-existence, which is really a mental concept, it's a speculative concept, does not exist in reality, because in reality, being is, everything is non-existent except being. The further away we go from being, the less light of being is reflected in the existing entity. So the simile of light, absolute light, in its very essence, in its very nature, and the way that light radiates, is the basic structure of being in existence, the basic structure of reality. The gradations of people, the gradations of created entities, including mankind, are what is known as tafaddul, ranking, and they relate to the distance that we are from the source of light, or from light itself. So the word tafaddul, which appears in the Quran, has been, many people have asked me, how can there can be, if there is, where is justice, where is the adala of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if there are different ranks given to human beings in terms of material reward? That's not what ranks mean. That's not what tafaddul means. Tafaddul means there are ranks due to the distance that people or entities have from the source of light. And only man, nearly everything, inshallah we'll come to that later, but nearly everything goes back in the form from which it was created, nearly, except man. And the distance that man is from the absolute light is what the ranking of reality is about. So reality, that is the emanation of being into existence, that is the radiance of light as it comes down from the absolute source, is what causes the ranking in the universe of man, the universe of the imaginary world, the universe of the spirit, and the universe of the corporeal world, the universe of bodies. So ranking is a central feature also of the system of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By its very nature demands ranking as we move down the gradations of light. I would say the most critical concept that Ibn Arabi uses in his works, and central, or one of the central themes of his teachings, is the weight that he gives to the divine attributes or to the divine names. And here we're talking about what we know in Arabic as Asma Allah, the divine names. These are the processes or the relationships by which being interacts with existence. The divine names and the attributes are basically a bridge, an isthmus, or another word which he uses frequently, barzakh, which links the created entities with being itself. And it is the relationship of being to created entities, to existent entities, is what the divine names are all about. And it is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relates to all the various objects of His creative activity. So these are the names of power, the names of justice, the names of generosity, the names of knowledge. These are the relationships which link created entities, existent entities, with being in its sheer plenitude, in its sheer consciousness. So the divine names are the names, they are not entities in and of themselves. They are relationships that link created entities in all of the gradations and the rankings of the world with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or with being, al-haq, reality, in its true, complete and consolidated self. Also allows in Arabi to make the possibility of tanzih, that is absolute transcendence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and tashbih, which is a form of similarity possible in that system. And the link between that, the link between all created entities and absolute being is, or are, the divine. Another word, or another concept that comes up frequently in his works are acts, or the immutable entities, what he calls the immutable entities, which in Arabic are the a'yan al-tabta. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the divine names, acts. By action he brings the potentiality of things into existence. Things either exist in the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it's what is known as a ma'luma in the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or where they may not be brought into existence. Or they are mawjudat, that is, they have been brought into existence. All things, all entities, whether they are in the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or have been brought into existence, are objects that have been brought into existence as a result of divine action through certain principles. So everything that exists, everything that is created, everything that may be created by the wisdom and rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has a certain form to it and has a certain meaning to it. And these are two other words that are important in understanding Arabic. Surah, which is form, and ma'na, which is meaning. Every entity, be it created, be it uncreated, be it in the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has these two elements. And these are what are known as the a'yan al-tabta, the immutable entities. To bring it into more terrestrial level, when you see a person, you see his form. You can relate to his form. That's his outer form. But he also has a meaning. He also has a certain purpose. He also has certain aspects and attributes to him that you're unable to see or unlikely to see. So form and meaning are the two features of all existent and created entities, and they are brought into being as a result of divine action. I talked earlier about the rankings or the tafaddul that exists in creation. Creation is not scattered randomly. Creation exists as the degree by which things or entities are near or distant from the radiance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala determines their rankings. There are also rankings in the divine names. For example, Allah's power to do something is subservient to His desire to do something. So irada is, which is desire or will, is on top of power in terms of its degree of ranking in the divine names. So the macrocosm, all created entities, which includes things, which includes human beings, which includes the universes, which includes the realm of the spirit and of imagination, which includes also movement and actions, have certain rankings associated with that. And these these rankings are the structure of the universe, not just only in material form, but in spiritual form, is a function of the power of the divine names in terms of their own order of hierarchy. So hierarchy and order and ranking are again a feature of the system of the great master. The other system, the other central concept that crops up time and time again in Ibn Arabi is the coupling, or naqidain, as it were, which is the juxtaposition of one against the other, and that includes the divine names. For example, the divine name Awwal has the juxtaposed against the divine name Akhir, the first, the last. Light is juxtaposed against darkness. This world against the next one. Everything in the system of Ibn Arabi, every conceptual structure has positive and negative. And the unification of the two, the understanding of the two, in terms of rankings also, allows us to go into the heart of the matter and to see things, as the Prophet ﷺ said, ask Allah to see things as they really are. All of these are linked together, the macrocosm is linked together by being, creation, and barzakh, which is the ismuth, that we call the ismuth or the interspace. This crops up time and time again, and the interspace is the place or the space in which the divine names and the divine actions act on creation in order to create the ordering that is necessary for the universe or the universe in its totality, not just the physical universe, to have an existence. In other words, the macrocosm basically is one that moves from spiritual, that is the realm of the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the level of the malakut, the angels, to the most gross, which is the level of bodily, corporeal, and in between is the interspace, which is the world of imagination, alam khayal. And the ability of the corporeal world to understand the spiritual world, and the spiritual world to manifest itself in the corporeal world, is through this barzakh. Cosmos, therefore, is the interspace, the existing entities that we see, the actions that we can measure, the positions that we can ascertain. These are not reality. This is the realm of in-between. It has the potential of reaching the spiritual realm, and it has the potential of staying where it is, in the realm of denseness, in the realm of relative darkness. So the whole process is related to the movement of one towards the other, and the descent of one to the other. So if you again look at it in terms of arts, the emanation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the effulgence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from being into existence, we go down the arc of creation to these various universes. But there's also an ascending arc, and the ascending arc is what the purpose of us in the universe, and the purpose of all beings, all entities is to ascend back. Entities that have no ability, except what is commanded of them, return back mainly in the form in which they have been created. A tree will live as a tree and die as a tree. Man, it is true in one way, in one form, will live as man and die as man. But in another form, he can live as a ignorant, dense person, or he can rise up the hierarchy before his physical death into true life. So the arc of ascent back to the source of light, and the movement of creation, the movement of all entities back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is again a feature of all the order of creation. I talked earlier about the microcosm and man being the microcosm. Why is man the microcosm? Why is man, humanity, mankind, able to reflect the entire order of creation in itself? Many walis before Ibn Ali said that. Ali Allawi said that man is a microcosm. He has in him the potential of all. He has jism, which is his soul, and he has jism, which is his body. These three things exist in us. And because they exist in us and in no other thing, the potential exists in man to rise up and realize in himself the